Next speaker is Representative Liz Pike. Liz, where are you? Back at the, welcome, Liz.
I'm on the fall on my way up here. What a great crowd this is. Thank you all for being here on this beautiful, sunny Friday afternoon. And I'm happy to have been granted permission to escape Olympia for the day. Don't you think that the traffic relief, the basic goal of traffic relief should be to reduce congestion? Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like reducing traffic congestion is really the priority of the Washington State Department of Transportation. And I just want to give you kind of a 30,000 foot view of why I think the policy is wrong in how we develop these projects. Now, the CRC is one small microcosm of the entire state transportation department, in my opinion. In 2000, Washington created this 2000 Blue Ribbon Commission for Transportation. And it identified benchmarks to make sure that we have an effective transportation system. And, basically they said, okay, traffic jams and delay times per driver have to be reduced, and they can't be any worse than the national norms. And that seemed like a pretty good idea. Well, 7 years later, in its infinite lack of wisdom, the Senate passed, actually the entire legislature passed Senate Bill 5412, which basically repealed those tenets of reducing congestion as a priority for Washington projects. Instead, they substituted 5 policy goals: preservation, safety, mobility. I'm okay with those. But then they threw in environment and stewardship as tenets of transportation policy. And I'm an environmentalist, so don't think I don't like the environment, but this is about moving people and freight. As a result, the Washington State Transportation Commission and WashDOT created this thing called the 2006 Investment Guidelines to prioritize transportation spending in Washington State. Now, this was a feel-good policy that really did nothing to increase mobility in the state of Washington. Transportation officials shifted away from spending money to actually fix bottlenecks, and instead they spent money on alternatives, which we all know today is light rail, bus rapid transit, in bike lanes. In fact, relieving transportation congestion is no longer even a factor in determining how transportation dollars are spent in Washington State. If that sounds frightening to you, it should. Instead, policymakers are spending money on less efficient forms of transportation, which I already mentioned. And all this bad policy leads to basically more government spending and more traffic congestion. And as you know, I'm very opposed to the CRC transportation plan for all the reasons that were very eloquently stated before I got here and that will be stated after I leave the stage. If you get a moment, I'd like to have you take a look at this graph. It's a little bit too small for the amount of people in this room. But make no mistake that light rail is an agenda. It's not a transportation solution. And think about that. It is an agenda and not a solution, and that is why this project is being proposed. In the Seattle region, which is the basis of this chart, you can see that there's passenger vehicles that account for about 85% of the transportation. That means people like us that drive in their cars. That's 85% of the people in Seattle. So the other 15% includes people that ride mass transit, they ride their bike, or they walk. Yet, 60% of the transportation dollars are being spent on mass transit. So think about that, 60% for only 3% of mass transit, or if you want to even include the bikers and the walkers, 15%. It's even worse when you look at the public transit share. There's 14 million daily passenger trips in Puget Sound. And when I say Puget Sound, I mean Pierce, Snohomish, and King County, clearly the most populous area in our state. Sound Transit collects half the transportation funds that goes into the public transit region, and remember, for less than 15%. This leaves basically 40% of transportation dollars to move 97% of the state. And I'm not trying to beat up Sound Transit, but they make it so easy to beat them up. Because I can't remember all these facts and figures, I am going to read some of the things that I don't like about Sound Transit. And I bring them up because they are a huge part of our transportation dollars goes to Seattle. I looked on their website to try to find out how many people work at Sound Transit, and it is shocking. They actually have, I'm in advertising and marketing, but they actually have an entire communications department at Sound Transit with 33 full-time employees. The top dog, he earns about $160,000 a year, plus benefits, retirement, which is probably about $200K. And most of the salaries are over $70,000 a year in that department. Plus benefits, so about $100,000. Okay, there's also the CEO of South Transit. He makes about $219,000. That's $219,000 a year, and plus salary and benefits. So he's probably up to about $250,000. And there's 80 other people listed in his department under leadership at South Sound Transit. There's also 39 people that are in planning, environment, and project development. That's a whole division at South Transit, 39 full-time employees. There's 160 people in operations. There's 176 employees full-time in a department called Design, Engineering, and Construction Management. There's 96 full-time employees just in finance and information technology. This is just one transit agency. They even have a legal department with 12 full-time employees. 8 of those are attorneys. So, I would expect that Portland's light rail and mass transit industry probably has a similar business structure to it. And the reason why they are forcing this project down your throat is because they need your money to fund that same boarded system at Metro and at that. I know that my time's almost up, but I just want to finish with, for me, this is about supply and demand economics. In economics, supply is a function of demand, and Washington policymakers want to build a CRC and hope that people will show up and write it. Transportation money shouldn't be spent. That only works in movies, that build it, they will come. I think transportation money should be spent on natural market demand, and we should use consumer demand to prioritize that spending. Likewise, government should not spend a disappropriate amount on these projects that aren't going to move very many of their people. Just my last little closing remarks. We need solutions for our transportation problems in Washington State. What I want to do is encourage my colleagues in Olympia to use this consumer demand to prioritize our transportation dollars. Let's adopt a policy that fixes choke points, increases road capacity, and end gridlock so that our citizens have freedom of movement, because that's really what it's all about. So when we focus on those two things, we will get our traffic moving again. But let's face it, in my opinion, Washington State mass transit policy is failed. Government is supposed to serve the society, and it's not the other way around. Right now, we're serving them. These policies are forcing citizens to change their behavior, and it disregards all those free market, natural marketplace tendencies that we should do. Ultimately, these engineered transportation plans are eroding all of our freedom, and even so far as our political freedom. So in closing, I'd just like to say, let's build a transportation infrastructure that's based on measurable results and not political ideology. Thank you.